Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of hyper-specific TouchDesigner topics not often discussed in tutorials. Today, we're going to be talking about operator info. As we all know, operators have rich internal lives with hopes and dreams and things like that. And when we're working with them, it's good to be able to understand how they're doing. And this is where operator info comes in. There are a few different ways that we can get at this information. The easiest one is just to middle click on operator in the network, and you get this little pop up with a bunch of details there. You can get to that same stuff by clicking the little I in the parameter dialog. And then there are a few ways that we can access that information using specialized operators, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. Different types of operators will show different things in their info pop-ups, but there's some stuff that's common across all types of operators. All operators will show the path. It'll show what type of operator it is, how many times it's cooked, and how long that took in the last frame. I did a whole separate video about cooking and all the details of that whole mechanism. So if you're interested, check that out. Tops are going to show information about their size and aspect ratio, what the pixel format is, and so on. They also show how much GPU memory this specific top is taking up, as well as kind of the total usage across all tops in your project. Different types of tops will show additional information, like a movie file in top is going to show what point in time within the video is being played. Chops will show details about how many channels there are, what the sample range is, and for each channel, it'll show the name and the minimum and maximum and the average, I think. In the case where you have more than 30 channels in a single top, it's going to cut the ones off the bottom, but it at least gives you the first 30. It'll also show the minimum and maximum across all the channels and all the samples in the whole channel. For table-based stats, it'll show you the size in rows and columns. For text-based stats, it'll show the length of the text, and then it'll also show a little preview of the text. If there's a large amount of text in there, it's not necessarily going to show the whole thing, like it'll cut off at some point, although it can actually cause problems sometimes if you have like a really large stat and you middle click, it'll kind of stall out while it prepares to show the text there. So maybe it's not cutting off as much as it should. Just something to be aware of. For SOPs, it'll show the number of points and primitives and vertices and all that stuff. It will also show the center position as well as the bounds and size of all the points and stuff in that SOP. Then it'll show the different point and vertex and primitive attributes that are in there, as well as roughly how much CPU memory this SOP is taking up. Pops will show pretty similar stuff. They show, again, like the number of things inside them, as well as, center and a size, and then more stuff about, the attributes. For the math combined pop specifically, it'll even show you a simplified version of the shader code that it's generating and run. Different types of comps will also show information. So anything kind of geometry based, and that includes like light comps and things like that. It's going to show the center position as well as the bounds of whatever geometry is in there. Then for panel comps, it's just going to show you kind of the position and size within the panel. When operators are unhappy, they express that with this little icon that shows up in the corner. If they're just slightly distressed, they'll show this little yellow warning icon. But if they're really upset, they'll show this red error icon, and it'll even show an overlay on the operator itself. Info pop-ups will show details about any warnings or errors on an operator. Warnings tend to include things like referring to files that don't exist, and sometimes when there's like a device like a Connect that isn't actually connected. Although one could make a case that an error would be more appropriate there, but whatever. Warnings will also include things like script operators where the code for them is like technically valid Python, but it has some sort of error condition that happens within it. So it'll show a little pop-up there. and give us details about that error. In cases where the code isn't even valid Python, then it'll treat that as an error. So you'll get details about which part of the code is having that problem. One thing to note about errors and warnings in TOPs with Python code that refers to code elsewhere, the error indicator might not automatically clear if the error was in code from elsewhere that you're using and you fixed it there, but like you haven't actually changed the code in this specific DAT. Sometimes you would need to toggle bypassing or something on it to clear the error. When you have operators nested inside a comp, if there are errors, those will show up on the parent comp and it will say that there are nodes with errors inside. It doesn't always give you full detail about what those errors are. Sometimes it will just say there are errors somewhere inside me, but I don't know what they are. You should probably go look. And then sometimes you get actual details. I do not know what determines whether it actually shows that information. For warnings, though, those do not show up on a parent comp. So to find those, you would need to actually jump inside and look around. All this information is really great, but what happens if you want to actually use it to control stuff? Introducing the amazing info chop and also info dat. You point it at any operator and it will give you a bunch of channels that provide details about what's going on in that operator. So it'll always have a bunch of stuff about performance, about like how long it took in the last frame. And for chops, it gives you a number of channels, things like that. For tops, it will show the resolution and aspect ratio and other things like that. And for specific types of tops, like movie file in, it shows a whole bunch of extra information about the current playback time, the total length of the file. It even gives you a channel for whether it has hit the last frame. And so you can use that for like queuing up something else to happen when a video finishes playing. For more detailed information that isn't numeric, there's also the info dat. Most operators don't actually provide anything for the info dat, so you'll often see it just being empty for a lot of types of operators. But certain specific operators will provide detail. So, like the point file in top will show us all the different data channels that are inside it. Or for a GLSL top, it will show you details about the shader compilation, including any shader errors that might have happened or compile failures, things like that. And when you create a GLSL top, it actually automatically creates an info dat connected to it. Anyway, with all these tools, you can now learn about the complex inner lives of your operators. UpInfo can be a great tool for debugging issues and just generally understanding what's going on in your projects. Hopefully this was helpful. I might do another one that gets into more detail about the like errors and warning stuff. I may also do some that are about things like, the pressure to create as an artist and like maintaining motivation, things like that. Let me know in the comments if any of that stuff sounds interesting to you, or if you think I'm amazing, or, if you have strong opinions about OpInfo for some reason. I don't know. I like it in comments. If you want to support me making more of these, consider subscribing to my Patreon. You'll get early tutorial access and file downloads and things like that. I'd also like to give some love to the people that support me over on Patreon. I really do appreciate you all. Bye.